Hi, my name is Fabian Soto and I'm an assistant professor at FIU in Miami. The title of this presentation is A Neurocomputational Account of the Mechanisms Underlying Face Perception Biases in Depression. People with depression show a bias to interpret ambiguous faces as expressing negative emotion and a general impairment in processing of emotional faces. There is little understanding of the mechanisms underlying such biases. Because there is evidence of high-level biases in depression, the simplest explanation is that face processing biases are decisional or cognitive in nature, so whether or not there are any perceptual mechanisms involved is an important question. Signal detection theory can be used to dissociate perceptual and decisional processes in perceptual tasks. Imagine that somebody has to indicate whether this face is showing a sad expression. This involves two steps. First, the perceptual system extracts sensory evidence that the face is showing a sad expression. This process is influenced by perceptual noise, so the sensory evidence changes randomly from trial to trial. Such noisy representations are captured by these normal distributions, one for the neutral face in red and one for the sad face in blue. The distance between the distribution means represents their perceptual discriminability. Second, the observer sets up a decision bound, indicating how much sensory evidence is required to decide that the face is showing a sad expression. The lower this bound, the more bias exists to indicate that the face is sad. Signal detection theory allows one to separately quantify these perceptual and decisional factors. The extension of signal detection theory to multiple perceptual dimensions, known as general recognition theory, allows researchers to study the interactions between two or more dimensions. According to GRT, such interactions can happen at the perceptual and decisional levels. Imagine that now the face also varies in identity. Changes in identity can interact with emotion processing in two ways. First, they can affect how face emotion is perceived. For example, focus on the two blue distributions representing different identities showing sadness. The area between the distributions, shaded in blue, is a measure of their distance. It measures to what extent changes in identity produce changes in perceptual representations of sad faces. This is known as a violation of perceptual separability and essentially represents an inability to filter out information about identity when processing emotion. The second way in which processing of identity and emotion can interact is at the level of decision making. The threshold used to make decisions about sadness might change depending on face identity. This is represented by two different bounds. This interaction is known as a violation of decisional separability, and it can be measured by the distance between the bounds. Here, we use signal detection modeling to dissociate perceptual and decisional mechanisms underlying face processing biases in depression. Each task involved 4 stimuli, which result from the combination of 2 identities and 2 emotions. In each trial, a combination of identity and emotion was presented and had to be identified through a specific response. The pattern of confusion errors was fitted to a GRT model. Measures of sensitivity, bias, and perceptual and decisional separability were computed directly from the estimated model parameters and compared between groups through their 95% confidence intervals. There were 3 different tasks in each session: neutral versus sad, neutral versus happy, and sad versus happy. The first and second sessions involved the same tasks using 2 different stimulus sets, which was done to check the generalizability of results across identities. The third session was identical to the first, but included stimuli that were made ambiguous by increasing similarity in both dimensions. All the results are presented in this table, which you can check by pausing the video or downloading a PDF version in the link below. In summary, happiness was in general more difficult to detect by people with depression, and there was a general deficit on emotion discrimination with ambiguous stimuli. There were no effects of depression on perceptual separability of emotion or identity. Regarding decisional mechanisms, we found that people with depression use different decisional strategies than those shown by control participants, but that those differences show absolutely no consistency across stimulus sets. An advantage of detection theory is that it can be linked to population encoding models from computational neuroscience to formalize hypotheses on how face perception might be affected in depression. A large body of work supports a 2-channel opponent coding system for face emotion, where a level of happiness is encoded by 2 neural channels represented here by curves of different color. The red channel responds most strongly to happy expression, and its response decreases with less evidence of happiness in a face. The black channel responds most strongly to anti-happy expression, which for simplicity we assume is the same as sadness. When a face is presented to this model, it outputs 2-channel responses, which include neural nodes added during processing. Perceptual evidence for happiness must be computed or decoded from the channel's output. This perceptual evidence is noisy and represented by the purple distribution, just as assumed by signal detection theory. We assume that in depression, the channels encoding happiness and other rewarding emotions showed suppressed activity, as shown by the orange arrow. Here's a simulation of the discriminability of happy and sad expressions against neutral as a function of expression intensity. More ambiguous expressions are closer to 0 in the middle of the scale. The simulation reproduces the asymmetrical results found in our study. In depression, there is a large drop in sensitivity to happy expressions throughout most values of intensity, whereas the same drop is found for sad faces only at lower ambiguous levels of intensity. That is, the model explains deficits in the detection of sadness in ambiguous stimuli as an indirect result of suppressed representation of positive expressions. The model also predicts results from several prior studies, like evidence of normal identification of unambiguous expressions, a drop in the ability of happy faces to compete for attention against neutral or sad faces, and an increase in the ability of sad faces to compete for attention against neutral faces. You can find more details about our study and simulations in the paper linked below.